And as most of you, I'm sure, are aware, we're doing something a little bit different today. For anybody who's going to be watching this online, you'll kind of notice that I'm out of position for what I would normally be doing. But that's because we are having a Recollection Sunday. This is about sharing our memories of coming to faith in Christ and the experiences that we have had in our lives thanks to him. And so it's not just going to be me speaking today. We have a number of our members who are going to be sharing those stories with everyone. But I did feel it would be a good idea just to show, how this can be done and to just say who I am, to share my own first and to give this example. Now, when it comes to my faith, my relationship with Christ, I've actually spoken with some other people about this, and there is not what I would say is a lot of drama to it. I was raised in the faith by parents who were already believers and who passed down that knowledge to me, and so this started very early in my life. I don't have necessarily the road to Damascus experience that some people do get to enjoy. There was a time in my life where I actually even felt bad about that to some extent because I felt like there was something lacking until I had a friend actually who explained to me that he envied me for that because I had been able to know the Lord for so long. And so it was just interesting in my conversation with him how it does go both ways, and you can see the value, and I've come to understand more the value of having him in my life effectively always. I do remember, though, being a young child and that moment where I asked Jesus to come into my heart with a policeman, was to give a little bit of a hint of how young we're talking about, before I did say, and I just so vividly remember this, sitting on the arm of the couch with my mom and saying this prayer, come into my heart with a policeman. No, Lord, you don't need a policeman to protect you. The policeman needs you. And that has been what has guided me in my life since then, is having that knowledge that I needed Jesus Christ. And everybody else needs Jesus Christ. I required his protection. I required his salvation. I have never been perfect, and in the life that has followed from that youthful moment, I have not become perfect. I believe I'm making progress in holiness, but that is all created by him. It is faith in Christ alone that saves me, and knowing that he loved me so much, as my parents taught me, as my mother and father taught me. He loved me so much that he died in order to have me with him, and there was no other way to make that happen. And so I do try to live my life in gratitude for that, because I truly am thankful to know him as my Savior and Lord. And I know that I am not the only one, and so I'm not going to take any more time from us here today. Ellie, you're going to go next, and so she's going to come up, and we'll have everybody kind of introduce themselves as they go forward. You don't know necessarily who's next up after you, so you're not calling them up. They need to know what they're doing. Hopefully we have the order all prepared. Okay. But I'll pass this over to you now.
I'm going to try to sum up 6 hours in a couple of minutes. So I can't say particularly there was a time that I've actually come to know the Lord. I've always known about the Lord. I was, since a little girl, always raised in church. My mom has always made sure I knew who God was, what Jesus done for us. So I've always known about the Lord. But it wasn't until my first crisis in my life, as in my 20s, when I actually lost a baby. And that's what really brought me to the Lord. When I lost the child, I was so angry with God that I didn't want to even get to know God. I needed to let it go. I didn't want nothing to do with God. Until somebody invited me to a play. It was Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames. So if anyone's ever heard of it, you know how the concept of the play goes. But there was one scene that this family died in a car accident, and it was either go to hell or go to heaven, and their names were in the book of life, so they were welcomed up the staircase to meet Jesus. At the top of the staircase, Jesus stopped them and went like this and brought out a little girl that they had lost prior to their accident. I lost it that day. That was the day that I said, that's it. I want a relationship with Christ. I need to have a relationship with Christ. I can't do this by myself. And I wanted to see my little girl someday again. So that was the day that really turned things for me. Some people think that starting a walk with Christ is easy. It's not. It's not always easy. I've been through my share of my own trials and tribulations. I've been through many more losses. I've been through multiple abusive relationships, which is another thing that I had to surrender to God because I wanted things to change to what I wanted. One day I realized it's not my plan, it's God's plan. And I asked God, I will give in to his way if he just wrapped his arm around my heart and gave me the strength to do what I had to do. And he did that. And that's the day I realized that my trust was growing in him. Everything that I went through, my faith was growing in him. I am a great example of God don't just change things overnight. I am a little hard-headed. Did I continue to live in sin? Absolutely. It took me years down the road to realize the convictions of the Lord and how he was working on me. There was even a time I thought I had to get rebaptized, and I went to Pastor Stanley, and he had to walk me through that and realize that God's still working on me. He's not done. And each day of my life, my desires change for him, where I want to do things that please him. I ask myself daily, is this what I want to be doing when Christ comes back today? And if it's not satisfying to my even measures, I know he's definitely not satisfied with that. But I do felt him daily, and I ask for forgiveness because I need him. I need him to walk me through every day of my life. Every day needs to be renewed, where I need him. And I just want to share one more thing because as my love just grew and grew, knowing that God has never forsaken me, he's never left me behind, never let me down. Even when it wasn't what I wanted, he still wasn't letting me down because he knew what was best for me, not me. But through Brad's accident that just happened recently, well, about a year ago maybe now, I was shown a whole new level of love from God. One that I thought God loved me enough already, where I cry at gratitude some days. It's not I don't cry out of sadness. I cry because I have so much gratitude for what God has done in my life through the years. But through you guys, through everyone out there that's prayed and just reached out your hand to help, that was God. Like, I couldn't even think God loved me any more than he did. And he does. He loves all of us that much that he was willing to go above and beyond for us. I mean, he sent his son to die for us. I mean, I don't even know how to measure that kind of love. But there's just something I want to share. Sorry, I know if that was the last thing, but a week prior to that, God had spoke to me, rearranging a living room actually. It took me a whole day. And all I heard God say was trust in the process. A week later, Brad got in that accident. And throughout Brad's whole tragedy, being at the hospital day and night was the first time in my life I've never asked God why. Because God spoke those words to trust in him. And I mean, I prayed on my knees. I was hurting every single day, absolutely. But I've learned through that even more to listen to God's word and just trust in what he's telling us. God is there, and he's never going to forsake us. So I don't really have much more to share. It's not going to go for hours. So I'm just going to end it there and just know that he deserves so much glory for everything that he does. So,
very good. Thank you.
Yes.
Good thing I was paying attention because I didn't know I had to hold a mic. I wouldn't have been holding the mic, but I got saved as a 23-year-old. I was a rough and tumble idiot person like we all are in our youth, and came to know the Lord through my wife, who was a born and raised Christian, kind of like her son here. That she was saved at a young age. I don't know what age. I never asked her. I didn't care. I just knew that she was down to earth, and everything she said, she actually believed in it. She practiced, and I watched that for several months, and September 9th, 1983, I became a Christian. I grew up in a Catholic church. I have a friend here who did all my catechism work for me so I could get the bishop's ring and get confirmed, and have another friend here that we've shared our testimonies for times, and he brought his son, and I appreciate those guys coming out today, and all you guys for listening to me, because when I get off this stage, I'll be like, I wanted to say this, and I wanted to say that, and I didn't get saved out of fear. I wasn't dying of cancer. I had no problems. I was living life large as you could when you don't know what you're doing. But I got saved out of love. Jesus Christ, when my wife preached to me that it's not preaching, she just kept emphasizing, he died for you. Not, when we're in a crowd, it's easy to blend in. oh yeah, I'm this, or I'm that, or let's do this, or let's go do. When you're by yourself and you realize that Christ died for you individually, one person. If I was the only person born ever, Christ still would have died for me. And when that hit me, and it hit me on September the 9th, 1983, I decided I would dedicate my life to him. And I may achieve that someday because I haven't done it yet. I mean, I'm weak, I'm worthless, I'm a sinner, I'm all those things. But I'm saved, and that's all that matters. It's fantastic. It is harder when you're a Christian than when you're not a Christian because nothing is sin to you when you're not a Christian. You're like, that's all right. I'll get through it, you know? But many things have happened since being a Christian. This song we just sang is a killer for me. You know, God did ruin. He took my wife. It's horrible. You know, a little over 4 years, and it's just fifth Christmas went through. What are you going to do? You keep going? Did I ever say, I'm not going to serve you, Lord? I don't like you anymore. I did not. He made me, and I'm to serve him no matter what he does to me. I still will serve God. I never stuttered once with that. Some people do, even in the Christian family. I've heard comments. Whether they did or not, I don't know, but no. Christ died for me. God made me. I'm to serve God. It's not the other way around. We think God's our buddy and he'll carry me and he'll do. And I mean, I could go on with so many different facets, but I won't because I see your faces. You're like, how long is it going to? I'm going to hang up the thing here now, but I do thank you for listening. I hope it helps somebody in their troubles or needs. Christ is the answer. There's nothing else.
Right? Yeah.
Like John said, I have a specific healing of the heart for my testimony. Take the saddest feelings you've ever had, the worst worry you've ever dealt with, and the greatest fear you've ever felt. Meld them together and carry that misery 24 hours a day. This accurately describes severe anxiety. So my testimony recounts when I was struck uneasy and how Jesus slowly, was not a lightning bolt, slowly relieved my despair. Okay, what do evil, anxiety, and Satan, the father of lies, have in common? Me. In Genesis 3:1-6, Eve was not tempted by the serpent to murder, steal, or even deny the goodness of God. She was tempted to simply doubt God, and she did. Adam followed, and I did too. I was 10 when Satan abducted me as I walked home from my friend's house 3 doors down. I suddenly sensed a heavy, translucent cloak of fear falling over me the moment I glanced at the endless pitch-black summer sky above me. Satan silenced even the crickets while he slandered God in my ear that night. He whispered, like that black sky, death is living forever in dark nothingness. And I believed him. His torturous lie was far more convincing than the soothing heaven that Sunday school offered, because I felt scared, alone, and taken over, and it lasted for many years. I had asked God for help, but like Abraham's wife Sarah, my impatience led me away from prayer, jumping to philosophy and modern calming techniques. I still believed in God, Jesus, but I didn't know him. To ward off my relentless, extreme panic attacks, none of which worked. Eventually, I was without hope, empty. I admitted to God that it didn't seem like he was going to help me. I told him I didn't want to be here anymore, but I was afraid to die. Was it even worth being born? I felt trapped. Anxiety here and the possibility of nothingness there. Okay, where was I? Little by little, I turned my prayers into more than just words of desperation, spoken in fear. I need a tissue, please. Spoken in fear. Thank you so much. Ellie made me lose it. Speaking in fear, I began to realize that my faith was shallow and my fear was deep. How patient and loving God was not to give up on me. I finally dove into his word, and this is what I found. It wasn't enough to know of God. Even Satan knows of God. I needed to know God. Over time, I came to know God through the life, death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And wow, the joy that fills my heart and the peace that passes all understanding, found in John 14:27, now outweighs any whispers from the darkness, and I still get those whispers sometimes. Like all of us, I am not without troubles and sad times just because I'm a Christian. And I certainly don't know why things go the way they do, John, but I do know where to turn. By God's grace, through my Savior, Jesus Christ, I am healed from the fear of living in dark nothingness. My faith is no longer shallow. My fear is. John 3:16 promises everlasting life for those who believe that Jesus is who he says he is. I will never doubt that promise. When rough times come, I rely on the godly remedy, medicine, found in Romans 12:12. Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. I highly recommend this biblical medicine to be taken 3 times a day when needed. You may know happiness, but I believe the joy that Pastor Stanley talks about is only found in knowing Jesus Christ. So whatever you're facing, know where to turn.
Like many of us, I'm Kristen. Like many of us, I grew up in a Christian home. We went to church every Sunday. My understanding of Christianity is that it was a collection of stories and a set of rules, and I knew those stories and I knew those rules well. I knew how to articulate the gospel. I knew the idea of it, but I knew it, but I didn't know it. I didn't really believe it. So around age 16, I kind of drifted away from Christianity, and it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like I was angry. I hadn't gone through any sort of religious trauma. I didn't need it. I didn't need the rules, and I certainly had better things to do on a Sunday. I could be good without God, as they say, and that's exactly what I did, whatever I wanted to do. And for a while, that was very freeing and very liberating until it wasn't. And that's typically how sin works. A few years go by, and I wind up in this very dark place. For the sake of time and my own ego, I won't give you too many details, but just trust me when I say I was not on good behavior. I was doing a lot of things I shouldn't have been doing, and I was hurting a lot of people, myself included. And I started to feel really guilty and really ashamed of some of the things I was doing, and that guilt made me angry. On top of feeling isolated and alone, I was feeling guilt too, and I blamed that guilt on my religious upbringing. And the only way for me to shake this feeling of guilt was to prove that everything I had been taught was a lie. So that's what I set out to do. Me, Kristen Geckel, the great philosopher of our age, I was going to disprove Christianity, all by myself. So that's what I did. I went down the rabbit hole. I listened to podcasts and lectures and debates. I was reading books to try to prove to myself that it was all a lie. And at some point, the rabbit hole took a bit of a detour, and I started to find apologists and theologians and pastors, even one mathematician who was saying how math points us to God, and they were all making a defense for the faith. This went on for months of me just learning all kinds of things, and I came to the conclusion that the only logical place to be is to believe that it's all true. It all has to be true, that God is real, Jesus is exactly who he says he is, we can trust the Bible, and that the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus, it is historic fact and it's true. So I had this head knowledge, like, okay, it all has to be real, it all has to be true. Now what? Am I saved now? I believe this. Not quite yet. So I listened to a YouTube video when I'm doing all my research, I find this video and it says how to know if you're really saved. So I click on the video. This guy delivers the gospel, and I had heard it a million times before, but it hit me a little bit different this time. In that moment, I understood that the resurrection of Jesus, the death of Jesus, it wasn't just a moment in history, it was personal. And he didn't just die for us collectively, he died for us individually. He died for me. And that hit me a little bit different. For the first time, I really understood why Jesus did what he did. And it was my sin that held him there. I was the one who held the nail. I was Barabbas. I was the one who got to walk free. And Jesus said, I'll do it. I'll stand in my place. And I had never realized that before. The gospel just hit me so differently in that moment. Sorry, give me 1 second. I lost my train of thought. And then in that moment, so I'm listening to this YouTube video in my room. In that moment, I fell like face down, confessed every horrible thing that I had ever done, just begging God for forgiveness. Like, I'm sobbing. If you've ever seen The Goonies, when the kid is confessing everything he ever did from like kindergarten on, that was me, just everything. And I begged God for forgiveness. I said, I want what you have to offer. I want salvation. I want forgiveness. I want to live for you. And I don't know how to explain it because I feel like it was supernatural. In that moment, when I asked God into my life, it felt like the weight of the world was lifted from my shoulders. I felt like there was a light in me. I felt physically lighter. And ever since that moment, Christ has been king of my life. I think John said it best. Jesus is the answer. It's always been Jesus. It always will be Jesus. It's nothing but Jesus. He is enough, and I live with that every single day. And that's it. Thank you for listening.
All right, well, I'm Zach, and my story is pretty similar to Stanley's, actually, and it just kind of shows how, similar backgrounds and everything, but everyone's unique, and everyone's relationship with God is unique. Because I remember when I was around 5 or so, it was the same situation. Mom came to me at one point and was saying, we're going to pray now to God to pray for your salvation. And I remember just being like, all right, yeah, that makes sense, and just going along, saying the prayer, and just, that was it. It was, to me, it was like, okay, yeah, this is what you've been teaching me, and this is what I should do. And, when you're young, you can understand it and, do it, but maybe you don't actually think about it because you're just kind of following along with what your parents were telling you or what, you've just understood to be true. So I just kind of remember, it was like, yeah, this is logical. Now I'm going to do it. And now, okay, it's done. I prayed. Can I get back to playing with my toys that you rudely interrupted? I distinctly remember that feeling of being 5. It's like I was playing in my room, and it's like, all right, we could have done this later, but all right. So then that was just it. And then for years, that was just my understanding, and everything seemed fine. And I remember years later, I was around 10, so about 5 years after the fact, for school, we were reading the Left Behind books, but specifically they had children editions or versions, different stories, if any of you know those. And while I'm reading it and just really paying attention to the stories and just seeing how these characters were like, they were alone making their decisions to follow Christ in a world that was the whole premise of being the rapture, and all the Christians had left, so it's people just trying to figure out what happened and then realizing that they didn't know God or didn't know him as well as they thought, so they made the decision on their own to follow him. And while I'm reading this, it just kind of clicks that it's like, I didn't really, I did it because my mom prompted me. It wasn't really just me, understanding it or going to God one-on-one. So that's when I was reading them and we finished our lesson, and I turned to my mom and I'm like, I think I need to actually, basically do that again, do a take 2, more or less, because it felt like I needed to make this my own choice and understand why I was doing it fully. Because it's like, you never, different for everyone, again. When you understand why, that can come at different times, 5, 10, 20, God's going to always be looking to make you understand what exactly, your relationship with him is. So after I had said that, I sat with her again, and this time it was led by me doing it and just being like, all right, said the prayer, asked for salvation, and that's when it more clicked for me. And it was more just understanding that it has to be just between me and God. So I was, when I was younger, I was definitely, since I was always so much more quiet, more go with the flow. And I look back and I realize it's like I believed it, but I didn't understand why I believed it. And I didn't want to question it. But once I was those few years older, I realized I needed to make it between me and God alone. So, that's, like I was saying, it's different for everyone. Stanley, definitely, he always had a firm grasp from a young age right away, and, you could see that, and it was evident, but for me, it was different, and that's how I think a lot of people think that, if the situations are similar, then somehow that needs to jump to being the same. And that's not true, because our relationship with God is always unique. It's always one-on-one, because at the end of the day, at the end of your life, it's just going to be between you and Him. No one else is going to be involved. No one, there's not going to be, when you go to see Christ, at the end of your life, you're not going to have a team of people sitting there vouching for you. It's just between you, the Father, and Christ. So that's what I understood at a later age, but better late than never is kind of the theme of a lot of our testimonies here. So it's just important to understand that, you just have to be true to yourself with what you understand about God. You don't just follow the trends. You don't, follow the group, because the church is a collection of it's a church family, but it's not meant to think for us or decide for us. Your family's not meant to decide for you. It's just between you and God. And that's the most important thing, and it's the only thing that really matters. So.
Similar but not the same. That ended up being pretty much the theme that kind of ran through all of those. And we didn't plan that beforehand. That's just what the truth of the matter is that there are individual decisions that are made for everyone. We got to see a sampling of that. The thing that united all of them was understanding how all of these people, how every Christian over the course of the last 2,000 years has come to an understanding of their own, for themselves, that they need Jesus Christ in order to have the joy of eternity. And that is what I'm so grateful to everybody who shared that here today. Grateful for those of you who may not have stood up, but who have had those stories. Grateful for whatever opportunity there might be to share them with somebody who doesn't have that story yet, but maybe you see now how transformative it can be. I'm just grateful for everything that we've had the opportunity to experience together today. Thank you again, everybody, for being willing to step up and do that, which I know is not necessarily the easiest thing, but it's been beautiful. And we thank God for that opportunity. Above everything, we thank Him for the gift of His Son, Jesus Christ.